Are you wondering what tools you need to finish a 3D model and actually get it ready to be an actual model to go on the wall or be sold? Well, join me today as I talk to you about the tools that I use to do just that. See you guys inside. Hello and welcome to today's video. Today, as I said, we are talking about model finishing. Now, this is going to be a big conversation mostly about the tools that I use. There's a lot of tools. Some of them are straight hand tools, some of them are electric, some of the tools are even 3D printed to help me out with this process and make it to where I'm not having glue on my hands and all that kind of stuff. But it's one of those things, I go through a certain set of tools to get everything looking right. And it can be a laborious project. Sometimes they are smooth as can be, pop that support off, it's ready to go out to be painted. But sometimes there's a lot of pieces, there's a lot of fitting work, a lot of cutting down, and different things like that that you may have to do to a model depending on how it's printed. So today we're going to go through the tools of that. Now what am I going to hit on here? I'm going to hit on sanding tools such as files and even a small electric sander, which is really worth it because with FDM and that you really can't use a Dremel. It's not recommended. It's a good way to heat up your plastic and create a mess. But there's a little electric sander I use. We're going to talk about files. We're even going to talk about paint. Primers that I use, the three main paint brands that I use to paint, because I do most of my stuff all in acrylic. But we're also going to talk about other hand tools that are used in this process, pries, cutters, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to go up to my desk, which you guys may have seen if you've looked at any of the stream videos, and I'm going to show you all this stuff, even what I use to even rinse my paintbrush in. And we're going to talk about some paintbrushes too that I enjoy using to help this process along. So a lot in this video to be talked about. If you're interested in this content or want to see more content about 3D printing, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions about 3D printing or anything that we talk about today, definitely those comments down below. And a challenge. So I've had a few people ask me to print a few things. Down in the comments, what would you like to see me print in 2022? There's a couple of them, a Flash Gordon model that I'm already working on, and a couple other models I have planned for 2022 already. But if there's something you really want to see, or if you're a model maker and just want me to take a look at your model and maybe promote you, definitely send the info my way and we'll take a look at it. We'll try to print it and we'll get it out there. So just putting that out there for everybody because I'd like to know what everybody's interested in this year. I do try to keep it to a more science fiction setting and keep it clean. I won't do any risque models. Don't ask. So that challenge out there too. Let's hop up to the desk and let's start taking a look at these tools. Alright guys, as you can see there is a lot of stuff right here on my desk that we're going to talk about here in this video. So first off, I'm going to try to go in somewhat of an order but a little bit out of order, so bear with me because there's steps you got to jump back to and stuff like that. Mainly right now I'm just talking about the tools and kind of the process I use those tools on, okay? So first thing is, you've seen me use the Ardell yellow pliers and the MC108 red handle big pliers to pull off support. So that is kind of one of the tools that I use for that kind of stuff. Then from like my miniatures and stuff, I use the Citadel Snippers. These work really great, really good flat edge, and spring loaded, which makes life a little bit easier, and really good for getting in and fine stuff. So getting rid of a little bit of bits left over from supports and stuff like that, getting in there, these are really handy to do that. So now sometimes I don't like this tool, using this tool much because I usually wind up cutting myself, but you need a good X-Acto knife. They're very handy to have. If you've got kids interested in the hobby, parents keep this to you because they're sharp and will really cut you real bad real quick. So keep that in mind. But it is good for cleanup, scraping across the edge of a model, getting rid of strings, different things like that. Very handy tool to use. But my favorite tool for kind of the similar cleanup is the Citadel mold line remover. This guy, I didn't have a good finish on this one, so I want to clean him up. Come in there and scrape across, and he'll pull the PLA off just like the razor knife will, and get you that smooth surface. And the nice thing about it is, it will not cut you. Turn your hand red, but it won't cut you. So if you got kids interested in this hobby and interested in these models,
These are great. They're also great for cleaning up the Warhammer models, so keep that in mind. It's a little expensive, but it's a great tool for what it does and how it does it. So those 3 tools are pretty awesome and pretty useful. We're done with Mr. Reindeer here, so he'll go hide off over here. So I've cleaned up. Now I'm moving into the file, cleanup, and sanding. And one of the key tools is a good file. This file comes in really handy. This is a triangular curved file. You can get a really good set of files at Harbor Freight or online. If you spent 20 bucks on hobby files, you spend any more than that, you've spent too much. So these are really good. They're really great files. Links are down in the description below. But having a good file to come along those edges, clean up, and even to poke into spaces is really good to have around. So you definitely want to have a little file. The other thing that I like using is these softboard memory boards. They're great. I mean, yeah, they're fingernail files, but they do a good job, and they're soft, so you can bend them if you're going across a curved surface. You can bend them and get in there and get really cleaned up, and your wife or daughter may be real happy, or girlfriend may be happy you've got one of these laying around when they need it. So you've done your initial sanding. You got some gaps. My favorite, Vallejo plastic putty. It's a little expensive, but this stuff cleans up the job, cleans up the holes, makes life a lot easier. Now, if I can't do it with a 3D printing pen, which unfortunately I don't have one right now, I'm gonna have to buy a replacement because mine broke. But this Vallejo plastic putty is really great. If you saw the stream with the Super Star Destroyer, you guys saw this was going into the nooks and crannies. It was going on smooth. It was going on clean. It went on really well. The Tamiya putty is a bit thicker of a putty, but does a similar job. Very sandable, both easily sandable, both really easy to work with for filling in those gaps and holes. So definitely great tools. When you're pulling away supports, these metal pries can be handy dandy tools of getting in there and getting stuff pulled up. You guys can see I've kind of bent mine. These have suffered a long-term amount of use, but a set of these, yeah, it looks like dental tools, but they come in really handy in getting in the small spaces and getting pieces out, or getting the putty pushed into a hole or anything like that. So definitely good to have. Definitely good to have them, and saviors on your hands. So great tools to have around. Now, you guys also notice I have some plastic tools in front of me. Mike, what are you doing with a guitar pick? Well, actually, this isn't a guitar pick. This is a computer pry pick. And what I've actually used these for, this is one from ifixit.com, but I print these two on my printer, and I'll use them on those gaps to come across and pull the resin and fill it in. Really handy dandy tool, or if I'm working with Bondo in a small area, these can be great for getting that smushed in there and smooth so I don't have to do a ton of sanding. So really great tool to work with. And as far as fillers and large scale projects, you guys will see me pull out the Bondo. So simple guitar, if you got a guitar pick laying around and you don't use it anymore, it can be handy, but these are also really handy. Files will be down in the description below. This guy is really handy. It's a pry, so I can pry into stuff, but also it works really good at spreading glue or spreading the resin. And these are easily just 3D printed, so great little tool. Same with this spludger. I like having the point so I can push in filler and also drag this across the two edges and get a really good firm seam. So definitely tools worth having. So we've cleaned up, we've filled in gaps, we got to get the model put together right if it's a multi-part model. So we got glue. Oh, the glues. For FDM prints, I like using the tester cement for plastic models. This stuff is good. The red bottle works really well, so does the blue tube. But it just works really well. It takes a little while to start to cure, but it works really well. A lot of people will use epoxy. I tend to use epoxy more over on resin models. But this and the Tamiya extra fine cement works really well on FDM prints. Now, these will not work on resin prints. It just won't adhere. So keep that in mind depending on what your printer is. Watch that recommendation. When it comes to resin prints, epoxy is a good thing, and good old super glue. I tend to use the super glue. I can smooth it out pretty well. And these bottles come from Dollar Tree of all places, but they give me really good control and they don't dry out. And there's not a whole ton in there, but I don't tend to make a mess with these. I like it that I've got the little squeeze controls built in, and they work really well. And most epoxies work really well. but I try to steer away from the epoxy. So we got our model assembled. We filled our gaps. We want to give a final sanding so everything looks good. Now, FDM, resin, you guys probably want to steer away from a Dremel. I know it seems like a great idea, but these models work under heat, and a Dremel sanding bit and that will tend to heat up really quick, and then you've got a real big mess of your model. Where this tool from Microlux Tools, from Micromark, is really handy. Is a vibration sander. It's very small, very fine detailed, and there's multiple different shaped bits that you can get in here and get into your print, and it doesn't heat it up horribly. This is meant for working on thin plastic models, getting a good sand. So this tool is a bit expensive. I think this is closer to the $70 range, but when I've got a lot of sanding to do in ultra small prints, this guy is my lifesaver, especially after I've done a bunch of filler and different things like that, and I just want to get done quick. This guy gets pulled out of the toolbox. So definitely a handy tool to keep around. So we've got our model sanded, put together, we're ready to go to paint. Now paint, I'm going to talk a little bit of detail about stuff that I like to use, and kind of my process a little bit. So primer, I love using the Army Painter primer. It works really well. It's really fine. You don't lose detail as long as you do it right. And, make sure you're using it in the right conditions. Make sure you're staying about 15 to 20 centimeters away before you spray the model. And what I do is multiple thin coats, which is what's recommended on here. Just a little puff and go around your model and get it sealed. This is the matte black primer. I do a lot of my prints in white so they're visible against the printer, so I like priming in black because then I can see I've gotten everything covered with primer. I'll do gray as well. As you can see right here, I'll use the gray to do that as well. But this is my main spray primer until I run out of the batch that I have of these, and I'm going to go to more airbrushing primer, which brings me to the airbrush. This little handy guy is great for primering. This is a Kibbe all-in-one. The compressor is built in to the handle here, and it does a really good job. So I love this one for priming. I'm not a huge fan of using this for detail work though. So that's my only trade-off. I love doing this for the big flat base coats, but I don't like using it when I'm trying to do real detail work. I have the master compressor set that will be linked down in the description below. That's downstairs that I tend to use for that process. And I have 3 different airbrushes on there. But this guy is really good for the Vallejo spray primers and different things like that. I also tend to use the Tamiya liquid surface primer. This one comes in real handy for just spots I need to get to that I can reach with a brush that the airbrush is just making a mess of. So I'll use this one for that. It is an enamel base, so you have to use paint thinner to clean your brush, but it comes in handy when in tight situations. And then cleaning my brush. I love the Citadel water pot. This thing has so much goodness on the inside here that it makes just a paint look medieval. Now a lot of people still use pickle jars and cups and stuff like that. This has some added features of it's got lines across the bottom, so when you drag your brush across them, it's knocking out paint. It's ribbed right here, so it's also knocking out paint. And then when you're done, you pull it up through these grooves to pull your brush back together, but also knock any remaining paint out of it. So this cup comes in really handy. And while I'm talking about this, I'm going to talk about one other item that is key for some of the items that we're going to continue on into. And it's this big jug. So a gentleman named Joe Hudson taught me this, that we don't know what's in our public water supply a lot of times, depending on your city, your location, different things like that. So paints will react to that water, and you may not get the outcome you were looking for. So his recommendation to me was distilled water, because it's purified. You're not going to have those chemicals in it, so you're not going to have any weird reactions. So definitely, I think this gallon was 99 cents at my local Menards. So comes in handy. I use this in my wet palettes, my cups, anywhere I've got paint flowing around that's going to come into contact with water, because that contamination can just give me a bad day. So with that said, let's move on to paints. I have 3 main paints that I use. My favorite, and what I use on most of my stuff, is Citadel. This is a layer bottle here, but I have tons of base and stuff over here. I love the paint. It goes on smooth. It breaks it. You can mix colors really well. It is just a good paint. I hate the bottle. I wish they were still the eyedropper bottles, but you can 3D print to get around some of those. The contraption here holds the lid open so I can get my paint without getting splattered or having to keep lifting it all the time or knock my pot over. So handy dandy thing, great thing. Links are down in the description below. My second favorite paint that I use and I love for my airbrush is Vallejo. Vallejo makes really awesome airbrush paint, specifically airbrush made for your airbrush. But even their main colors are really good colors. I like the sky gray I use mainly for my Star Trek ships. That's my base color for a lot of it. For the more modern Star Trek ships, it is my base color for a lot of them. Now the older ones I'll use like cold white and different things like that. And then my third favorite and the newest addition to my thing is Monument Hobbies Pro Acryl. This stuff is really good. I love the transparent, especially if I'm doing like a warp nacelle or something like that. The blue is gorgeous. And I'm still testing these out. I've got the full collection now, but I'm kind of just testing them out as I go. Because like my Necron army that you guys will see some of probably on the streams and stuff like that, that's all in Citadel. I've got to just kind of match, so I'm sticking with it. But this stuff has been really good, and I love the bottles that I have options with the bottles of either the dropper or I can still use that. And I loved how they were sealed with an additional seal. You don't see that in a lot of paints. And I have had Citadel pots show up dried out. Where these, that's not going to happen unless that seal's broken. So those are my main three happy paints. Some of the stuff I'll use with it, if I want to give a paint peel look, I'll use Vallejo's chipping medium. This stuff, a lot of people will use like the hairspray method too, but I like the chipping medium. We put it in an airbrush, spray it over an area, and then you can paint over it and then come back and the paint will peel off as where the chipping medium was applied and give you that kind of peeled paint look. Great for like Death Guard armies or different things like that, or somewhere you're wanting to apply rust. This stuff comes in real handy. Or if you're wanting to accent panel lines. This accent color, it's a watered down gray, but I use it on the Pegasus to make those darker recesses between all the panels pop with a darker color. And this came in really handy. So definitely a great thing to have around. Now, one of the tools I have on a lot that you don't see is this. This is my magnifying glass set. This is a Yaktosan rechargeable built-in light eyeglass set. And what this set does, as you can see, it sits on my head very nicely. I can wear my glasses in front of it with it on my head. And also what I love about this is the lenses. They pop off real easy, and it comes with a set of 5 different magnifications that you can easily just pop on, pop off. So this ran about $30, but in comparison to some of the older kits that I've used, this thing is heaven. And I need to make sure I put that back on right, which there we go. But it's great for getting in those small details, especially with the Warhammer stuff and with the resin printing that I'm putting out now. These are basically a godsend to me painting. So definitely a have-to tool. I love that it's the battery is rechargeable with a USB cable, so I can have that light, and the light is directional. So definitely worth it. I love the nose grip. That's a lot of people's concern. They're rubberized, and they don't hurt as bad as you would think having this weight on your head would. So great handy tool. Link again is down in the description below. So before I hop into paintbrushes, I want to hop into paint storage. So a lot of us in school and stuff like that, we put our paint in a little plastic cup and it lasted about a day. And if we got our colors on, we did. If we did, we didn't. They were dried up and wasted. A wet palette will stop that for up to like 6 or 7 or 8 days. So what's really nice about this is there's a wet pad underneath the basically kind of wax paper type paper. I don't remember the name of it, but you'll see on this one, that paint's been active for a good week, and it is ready for me just to dip my brush in it and go painting. The moisture's on here. There's a moisture pad underneath. That moisture pad is watered down with distilled water so that I don't have a reaction. But it's just really handy, especially if I'm maxing colors and I've got a lot of work to do, or I got to come back with it and do a second layer. These keep my paint active and they keep it fresh so that I don't have a lot of wasted paint. Because sometimes you just squeeze the bottle too hard and you've got too much paint on the board. So these are great tools to keep it going. The smaller Army Painter one I think is around $30 or $40. This one is more closer to $75. And again, links down in the description below. But the final thing I'm going to talk about is paintbrushes. So I have some favorites, and some people may agree with me, some may not. But I have my favorites, and I have my not, and that's what I'm going to talk about is my favorites, basically. So first I'm going to start with my cheapest brush, which is a One Happy Choice. These came in a batch of like 50 from Amazon for like $10. They're very nice tipped, very fine, and let me do a lot of good detail work real quick. And I have a ton of them, so if I mess one up, I get paint up in the bushing or it fans out. Who cares? Problem solved. I do like the Citadel brushes. This is one that I got with a starter kit that I haven't broken into yet. They're good brushes, good bristles. They paint well and they hold together well. Just remember, don't get paint up around the metal bushing. Keep your paint down into the tip. That way your paintbrush won't fray out. Another one that I do enjoy using is the Army Painted brushes. Mainly because I like the handle and I like the bristle work. They work really well when I'm going into a lot of crevice detail area, so they work really well for me for that. Get this back in here without messing it up too much. It should be easy, but it's not sometimes. Probably shouldn't have pushed that out. I pulled that out, but what's done is done. And bingo. Alright, got it. These are from Nick Pro. You get 5 in a box. I think they're $10 for the box. I love the handle, especially when I'm really having to dig in there, that I have this really good grip point that I can do flicks. I use these a lot when I do my panel lining. So really nice brushes. The Davinci brushes, this is when I'm just going in doing a lot of fast nitty-gritty work. This 4 is a synthetic bristle, and they work really well and keep them clean, and again keep your paint away from the bushing. And this one has been used for a long time, and just kind of keep, you can see some paint is starting to get up in there, but it comes in real handy and does a good job. You guys will see me using this one quite a bit. The final brush I'm going to talk about, if you're getting in doing like ultramarine faces and different things like that and just need an ultra fine, I mean fine tip, this Tamiya brush is the one for you. So this is the Modeling Pro brush. This is the Pro 2. And I mean, it doesn't even, there's like one bristle. And this thing is great, especially for doing like eyes. Getting that little black dot on top of a little bit of color in the white of an eye, especially on like a 28mm Space Marine. These things are heaven to do that work. Now they are a bit expensive. These are about $15 a brush, but they work really well and are really awesome. And I may have 2 of them sitting here, but this one's been used for quite a while, and I take really good care of it because they're expensive. So, guys, that's what I use. Other than a lot of times I will use the Army Painter color lacquer to go over and seal the models once I'm done painting. So that's kind of the final step, and then they go onto my shelf. So I hope you guys enjoyed seeing all the tools that I use in this messy area that I do a lot of this stuff in. As you guys can see, there's some models that are coming. This one is definitely coming to the channel soon from Star Blazers. And we got some resin model over there, and these are actually Warhammer, so ignore those. But I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we're going to hop over back down to the shop. See you guys down there.
Alright guys, that's how I do this. Those are the tools that I use to do this process. From taking it off the printer, to removing supports, to clean up, sanding, de-stringing, all that fun stuff, to getting ready for the paint, to primer, paint, and hopefully a nicely finished model. I hope you guys enjoyed this content. If you found anything interesting or have a question about a tool or something I use, please check down in the description below. I put links to all the tools in the description, or why I use a tool a certain way. Like the Dremel, I don't use that on my models because it's too rough. It's too harsh. It'll heat up the FDM plastic and slag it. So we don't want to do that. So make sure if you have any questions, comments down below. If you're new here and you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Join us here so that you get more content just like this. As we wrap out the year, we got more cool stuff coming. I've received a Voxlab Proxima and a Creality Halo 1. So those will be coming on the channel here shortly. I plan on trying to do a deeper dive into resin this year. So we're actually going to talk about some resin types this coming year and different things like that. So definitely like Esun resin, Ilugu resin, especially Esun's hard tough resin. They sent me some of this and I have loved it. So we'll definitely get to talking about that in this next year. So if you guys enjoyed the comment, make sure you're subscribed. And as always, happy printing.